What's more painful than betrayal? Not the accident, not the slip of the tongue, but when someone looks you in the eye and chooses to wound you. They didn't stumble into hurting you. They planned it. And that's what makes the question terrifying. How will you respond when cruelty is deliberate? Imagine this. Your trust turned into their weapon. Your love twisted into their advantage. That is no accident. That is intent. So what now? They didn't hurt you by accident. They chose to. And that choice changes everything. The real question is not why did they do it? The real question is, how will you treat those who deliberately try to break you? Because your answer determines everything that follows. Your peace, your strength, your future. The world will try to bait you into drama. Your ego will scream for revenge. But the Stoics discovered a weapon sharper than rage. Mastery of the self. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." That isn't denial. That is sovereignty. Tonight we draw a line. A clean line. No more bleeding energy to prove your pain. No more bargaining with people who profit from your reaction. No more renting out your mind to their chaos. Here's the frame. Emotional intelligence over impulse. Psychological boundaries over people-pleasing. Self-worth over approval. Inner peace over every performance of power. Because you won't outshout a manipulator. You outclass them by refusing to play. If they wounded you on purpose, understand this truth. Their cruelty is not your reflection, it's their confession. Your calm exposes their chaos. Your silence cuts their leverage. Your discipline becomes their defeat. In this video, you'll learn the Stoic way to deal with those who hurt you intentionally. How to see through envy and projection. How to enforce boundaries without bitterness. How to forgive for your own freedom, yet still walk away with strength. And how to rebuild a mindset so high-performing that no insult, no betrayal, no dagger of words can reach it. Don't descend into their pit. Ascend above it. Protect your peace. Guard your focus. Rise so quietly that the only sound they hear is their power leaving. Because there is a pain sharper than accident, deeper than careless words, the pain of being hurt on purpose. A trusted friend who twists your secret. A partner who turns your love into a weapon. A colleague who undermines you in front of others. Not by mistake, by design. That kind of betrayal doesn't just sting. It shakes the very foundation of trust itself. The Stoics understood this brutal truth. They never pretended that life was filled only with accidents. They knew some people act from envy, malice, or insecurity. Epictetus said it clearly. When someone is properly grounded in life, they will not take the bait of offense. Notice his words. He didn't deny that others would provoke or plot against you. He warned us. The key is to see it clearly without being consumed by it, and that is the first step, recognition. Stop sugarcoating their motives. Stop whispering to yourself, maybe they didn't mean it, when all the evidence says otherwise. Emotional intelligence is not about making excuses for cruelty. It's about seeing intent and choosing mastery over reaction. And so we continue. Recognition was the first step. But what comes after is just as important. This is about perceiving reality with clear, unshaken eyes. If someone shows you through their words or their repeated patterns that harming you gives them satisfaction, believe it. Not to sink into bitterness, but to anchor yourself in truth. Yet here lies the paradox. While recognition is vital, reaction can be deadly. Because the moment you allow their malice to dictate your response, you give them exactly what they wanted: control. The more you rage, the more powerful they feel. The more you crumble, the more victorious they become. That is why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Their decision to wound is beyond your control, but your choice to remain unbroken, that belongs to you alone. Think of it this way. Their cruelty is not a reflection of your weakness, but of their chaos. A soul at peace has no need to destroy. A secure heart has no desire to provoke pain. So when someone strikes with deliberate harm, they are revealing more about themselves than they ever reveal about you. They are exposing the fractures in their own spirit. Your task is simple but difficult. Recognize those fractures without letting them spread into your own life. Imagine the story of a young man betrayed by his lifelong friend. This friend knew his deepest fears and in front of others mocked him just to feel powerful. Humiliation surged through the young man. His first instinct was to retaliate. But instead, he looked his betrayer in the eye and said, "If hurting me is how you feel strong, then I pity you." And with that, he walked away. He didn't shout. He didn't collapse. He didn't chase revenge. And in that moment, his calm shook his enemy more than retaliation ever could. That is Stoic power, the ability to recognize intent without surrendering peace, to see the knife in their hand and refuse to let it cut your spirit. Yes, they aimed to wound you. Yes, it was deliberate. But the deeper danger is not their action. It is what you allow it to make you become. Pretend their malice doesn't exist, and you live in denial. Obsess over it, and you live in chains. The balance lies here. Recognition without reaction, clarity without collapse. You cannot control whether someone fires an arrow, but you can control whether you let it pierce your identity. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, who in your life has already shown you their intent again and again? Who smiles at you in public but secretly delights in your pain? Who crosses your boundaries not out of ignorance but out of choice? Recognize them, not with rage, not with endless explanations. Recognize them with clear, steady truth. Because clarity is the first step toward freedom. And here is the truth. Those who deliberately hurt you are not strong. They are weak. Their cruelty is nothing but a confession of emptiness, a desperate attempt to project their own brokenness onto you. Once you see this, their power dissolves. What felt like a crushing blow reveals itself for what it truly is, an echo of their insecurity. And in that recognition, you reclaim something priceless, your self-worth. You remember that being targeted does not mean you are fragile. It means you carry something they envy. You remember that your peace is too valuable to trade for their drama. You remember that the first true act of strength is not revenge, but recognition. Because once you see clearly, you are no longer their puppet. You are no longer trapped in the theater of their cruelty. You stand where they cannot reach you, rooted in truth, protected by boundaries, and steadied by inner peace. And from this place, we move forward. Recognition alone is not enough. We've seen how recognition matters. But recognition alone is not enough. You must also understand why they chose to hurt you. For clarity without context leaves the wound open, bleeding. In this chapter, we peel back the layers of envy, projection, and fear that drive people to deliberately harm others. Because seeing their motives with sharp eyes is the key to breaking free. When someone wounds you on purpose, the natural question rises, why? Why would someone you trusted, someone who once smiled at you, decide to cut you down? The Stoics warned us not to drown in that question, not to let it consume us. But they also urged us to understand the forces that drive cruelty. Because once you see through the mask, their power over you begins to collapse. The first truth is this: people project their chaos onto others. Epictetus wrote, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them. A soul consumed by bitterness interprets your success as an insult. A person trapped in fear sees your freedom as a threat. Someone insecure in their worth hurls that insecurity at you when they lash out. It's less about your flaws and more about their inability to manage their own demons. In truth, they are not fighting you. They are fighting the mirror you hold up to their inadequacy." The second truth is envy. Envy hides behind hostility. Marcus Aurelius observed that many harm others simply because they cannot stand to see them flourish. Envy whispers, "If I cannot have it, neither can you." Your peace unsettles those drowning in chaos. Your dignity exposes those who live without it. Your confidence rattles those who feed on manipulation. Instead of building themselves, they try to tear you down. But here's the irony. Envy is not proof of your weakness, it is evidence of your light. If nothing in you threatened their darkness, they would have left you alone. The third truth is control. Hurting you gives them a fleeting illusion of power. Manipulators thrive on reaction. When they see you flinch, when they hear your voice break, when they watch you stumble in anger, they feel in control. But that control is fragile. It exists only as long as you hand it to them. Seneca once warned, "He who angers you conquers you." Their cruelty is a trap. They want you to react, to spiral, to validate their power with your pain. But the moment you refuse that reaction, the illusion shatters. Think of it in the real world. Imagine a workplace where one colleague constantly undermines another in meetings. Why? Because deep down, that colleague fears being outshined. He projects his own inadequacy by belittling others. He envies the recognition they receive, so he tries to drag them down. By creating embarrassment, he gains a brief sense of control. Yet if the target refuses to react, if they respond with calm clarity, the aggressor's strategy crumbles. Their power vanishes in silence. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Those who hurt you deliberately are revealing their own brokenness. Their cruelty is not strength, it is desperation. Their betrayal is not about your worth, it is about their emptiness. And once you understand this, you begin to see clearly you are not the problem. Their chaos is, and yet danger still lingers. Because knowing why they act this way does not erase the pain. Sometimes understanding their motives makes the wound sting sharper. That is why the Stoics teach us balance. Seek understanding, but do not seek justification. You can acknowledge their envy without excusing their betrayal. You can recognize their projections without carrying them as your own. We've uncovered the motives behind cruelty, projection, envy, and the craving for control. But understanding alone is not enough. This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. Emotional intelligence allows you to see beyond the surface insult, to look past the sharp words or cold silence, and recognize the insecurity hidden underneath. Instead of asking, "Why would they hurt me?" you begin asking, "What wound inside them made this possible?" This shift doesn't erase the sting of betrayal, but it removes the poison it carries. Because once you recognize their cruelty for what it truly is, a mirror of their own weakness, you stop taking it as a measure of your worth. Think of it this way. If someone throws mud at you, it stains your clothes, yes, but it does not change who you are. The mud says more about the state of their hands than about the value of your soul. Your task is not to carry that mud into tomorrow, but to wash it away and walk forward untarnished. So why do they do it? Projection, envy, control. Each motive is born not of strength, but of fracture. Each act of cruelty is less about you and more about the storm raging inside them. And once you see this clearly, you gain a new kind of power, the power to detach. Because now, when their words cut or their silence wounds, you no longer see a giant towering over you. You see a broken person casting shadows, and that realization is liberating. It keeps you from surrendering your peace to their chaos. Yet recognition and understanding are only the beginning. The real danger lies in the trap that almost everyone falls into after betrayal, responding with rage, seeking revenge, letting bitterness write the next chapter. This is where many destroy themselves more thoroughly than any enemy ever could. And this is where we now turn. In the next chapter, we will face the most common mistake after betrayal, the urge to retaliate, and why Stoicism insists that revenge is not strength, but self-destruction. When someone deliberately wounds you, the instinct rises instantly. Fight back. Anger burns hot in your chest. Thoughts of revenge whisper like a siren in your mind, promising justice, offering relief, seducing you with the illusion of power. But here lies the danger. confusing retaliation with strength. The Stoics warned us long ago, anger is a chain, not a weapon. Seneca wrote, "He who seeks revenge harms himself." Notice the wisdom. When you pour your energy into revenge, you keep yourself tied to the very person who wounded you. They continue to live rent-free in your mind, shaping your choices, dictating your focus. Revenge feels like reclaiming power, but in truth, it only extends their hold over you. Think of the cycle. They hurt you on purpose. You react with rage. Maybe you hurl insults back. Maybe you plot a way to humiliate them in return. Maybe you drown in bitterness, replaying the wound over and over. For a moment, it feels satisfying, like fire sparking in the dark. But when the flames die out, what remains? Emptiness, exhaustion, and the bitter proof that they still control your emotions. Emotional intelligence exposes the trap. Anger and revenge do not free you, they reinforce the chains. Each time you replay the betrayal in your mind, you reopen the wound. Each time you imagine your revenge, you are still centering your life around the very person who hurt you. They may have cut you once, but through your obsession, you cut yourself 1,000 times more. We saw how anger and revenge are nothing but traps, chains disguised as weapons. And this is where Stoicism calls us to a higher path, restraint, not retaliation. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That is not passivity. That is mastery. It takes far greater strength to govern your impulses than to unleash them. Anyone can lash out. Few can remain composed. Think of two fighters in a ring. One lets anger consume him, throwing wild punches, burning through his energy, losing his strategy. The other stays calm, patient, measured. Who wins? Not the one flailing in rage, but the one who masters himself. Life works the same way. Your enemies want chaos. The moment you erupt, they have already won. But when you stay calm, when you refuse to step into their arena of drama, their supposed victory collapses. History is full of such examples. Men and women who rose above the urge to retaliate. One powerful image is Nelson Mandela. After decades of imprisonment, he walked out of his cell not with bitterness, but with reconciliation. He embodied what the Stoics taught. Retaliation ties you to the past, while restraint frees you for the future. His enemies expected hatred. His composure disarmed them. That is power. Now let's be honest. It is tempting to imagine revenge. In fantasy, it feels sweet. But here is where discipline steps in. Spiritual discipline and psychological boundaries whisper the truth. Your peace is more valuable than their drama. Every ounce of energy poured into vengeance is energy stolen from your own growth. Every mental rehearsal of what you'd say to cut them down is a thought not invested in building the life you deserve. So pause and ask yourself, is it worth it? Is their downfall more valuable than your rise? The Stoic answer is clear, no. True strength is not making them hurt as you did. True strength is refusing to let their cruelty reshape you into something smaller, colder, and harder. Real power is keeping your dignity intact while they collapse under the weight of their own chaos. Think of it this way. Revenge is about them. Discipline is about you. Revenge says, "I'll prove you wrong." Discipline says, "I don't need to prove anything. I know who I am." Revenge obsesses over their collapse. Discipline invests in your rise. And here is the question that decides everything. Which path creates freedom? Which path creates peace? The Stoics called anger a form of temporary madness. It clouds judgment, erodes clarity, and often inflicts more damage than the original wound. Epictetus taught, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. In other words, let the wound remind you to grow, not to destroy. So the next time betrayal burns in your chest, pause. Feel the rage, but do not obey it. Acknowledge the urge for revenge, but do not feed it. Instead, choose indifference, not apathy, but sovereignty. The kind of indifference that declares, your cruelty no longer dictates my story. Because here is the brutal truth. Anger is easy. Revenge is tempting. But peace? Peace is rare, and peace is priceless. Don't trade your peace for the cheap thrill of retaliation. Don't hand over your self-mastery to those unworthy of it. In the next chapter, we turn even deeper into the Stoic lens. Why controlling your response is not weakness, but the highest form of strength. For when someone hurts you deliberately, they are not only trying to cause pain, they are inviting you into a game of reaction, a game where they write the rules. And the only way they win is if you agree to play. The Stoics teach us the secret to victory. Refuse the invitation. We saw why revenge is a trap and restraint is freedom. Now the question becomes, how do we actually live this out when the sting of betrayal or insult burns inside us? Epictetus, who endured exile and slavery, said it simply, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Your enemy's strike is not the real danger. The true danger lies in how you allow it to shape you. They want you furious so you look weak. They want you broken so they can feel strong. They want you distracted so you lose sight of what truly matters. And the moment you react without control, you hand them the keys to your peace. The Stoic perspective flips the script. You are not a puppet jerked around by their strings. You are the master of your own response. You cannot dictate the actions of others, but you can decide the kind of person you will be in the aftermath. And that choice, that moment of sovereignty, is where true power lives. Think of a fire. If you throw wood on it, it grows wild and consumes everything in its path. But if you withhold the fuel, the flames die down. The same principle applies here. Your reaction is the fuel. Take it away, and their fire dies in silence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is not to be like the wrongdoer. By refusing to mimic their cruelty, you rob them of their victory." But let's be clear, controlling your response does not mean suppressing your feelings. Stoicism is not emotional denial. It is emotional discipline. A Stoic feels the sting of betrayal, the heat of anger, the ache of disappointment. But he refuses to let those emotions dictate his next step. As Seneca reminded us, no man is free who is a slave to his passions. To react blindly is to live in chains. To respond with clarity is to walk free. Consider this story. A woman was often mocked by her peers for her calm demeanor. One day, a colleague tried to humiliate her in front of a crowd. Instead of firing back, she looked at him calmly and said, "If you believe this reveals my weakness, then perhaps you misunderstand what strength is." Then she walked away. Her silence unsettled the aggressor more than any counterattack could. Her restraint turned the stage of humiliation into a mirror reflecting his own insecurity. This is the Stoic advantage. When cruelty meets calm, it collapses. When manipulation meets clarity, it withers. When provocation meets silence, it suffocates. You don't defeat your enemy by outshouting them. You defeat them by refusing to descend to their level. And this requires two tools: psychological boundaries and inner peace. Psychological boundaries remind you that their behavior is not yours to carry. Their words are not truth. They are only noise. Inner peace shields you from absorbing their chaos. Together, boundaries and peace make you untouchable. When they strike, they meet armor, not flesh. When they provoke, they encounter silence, not surrender. And here's the paradox. The calmer you remain, the more powerful you become. Why? Because you show them their tactics no longer work. Nothing frightens a manipulator more than realizing they've lost control over your emotions. Nothing frustrates an enemy more than discovering their cruelty cannot move you. This is not about pretending you feel nothing. It is about rising to a higher ground where their actions no longer dictate your mood, your choices, or your identity. You stop living in reaction and you start living with intention. That is Stoic freedom. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped playing their game altogether? If you no longer explained yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you? If you no longer gave your energy to people addicted to conflict? The answer is simple. We saw how calmness and control strip away an enemy's power. And when you decline their invitation to play, something remarkable happens. You reclaim your life. So the next time someone deliberately provokes you, remember this. They may have set the stage, but you do not have to perform. Their game only works if you agree to play. Decline the invitation. Control your response. Protect your peace. And in that refusal, you have already won. From here we turn to an even sharper Stoic tool, indifference. Not apathy, not coldness, but the highest form of self-respect. The power to look cruelty in the eye and say, "You no longer live here." Not in my mind, not in my heart, not in my story. This is often misunderstood. Most people think indifference means you no longer care, that your heart has grown cold, that you've shut yourself away from love and humanity. But Stoic indifference is something entirely different. It is not apathy. It is mastery. It is the conscious decision to withdraw your energy from what does not deserve it. The world expects you to react. Those who hurt you expect your tears, your rage, your explanations. They want your emotions as proof that they still matter. But when cruelty meets calm, when betrayal meets silence, when provocation meets indifference, it creates a disturbance more powerful than any retaliation. Why? Because nothing unsettles an aggressor more than realizing they no longer matter to you. Marcus Aurelius taught, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. That is the essence of disciplined indifference. It does not mean you feel nothing. It means you refuse to let their actions dictate your feelings. Think of it this way. When someone deliberately wounds you, they are throwing poison. If you drink it, by replaying their words, obsessing over the betrayal, or chasing revenge, the poison spreads. Indifference is the act of refusing the cup. You see the venom, you acknowledge it exists, but you do not swallow it. There is power in that refusal. Walking away without explanation is not weakness. Ignoring their games is not defeat. It is a declaration of self-worth. When you withhold your energy, you are saying, "My peace is more valuable than your drama. My growth is more important than your chaos." Consider this story. A woman was betrayed by a lifelong friend. Lies were spread. Trust was shattered. At first, she burned with the need to fight back, to prove her innocence, to expose the betrayal. But one day she realized she didn't need to prove anything, so she went silent. Not out of fear, but from clarity. She stopped explaining. She stopped chasing apologies. She simply lived with dignity. And over time, her betrayer's voice faded into irrelevance. That silence was not coldness, it was sovereignty. Because indifference is not about denying pain. It is about refusing to let pain become your compass. You still feel anger, sadness, disappointment, but you choose not to act from those emotions. You choose not to let them write your story. Emotional intelligence teaches us this truth. Feelings are visitors, not rulers. You can acknowledge them without obeying them. And here lies the paradox. Indifference often wounds your enemies more than anger ever could. Anger feeds them attention. Silence starves them. Indifference exposes the truth. They cannot bear the reality that their cruelty has no power over you. But let's be clear. Indifference does not mean tolerating abuse. It does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means building psychological boundaries so firm that you no longer allow repeated harm. It means saying, with clarity and strength, "You no longer live in my mind, my heart, or my future." We saw how indifference is not coldness, but wisdom. It is the strength to walk away without bitterness, carrying your peace like a crown. This is why indifference must never be confused with apathy. Coldness shuts the world out. Indifference simply chooses what is allowed to enter. Coldness kills love. Indifference protects it, guarding your heart so that when true kindness arrives, you can receive it freely, without the weight of past poison. So the next time you feel tempted to prove yourself, to shout back, to demand recognition, pause. Remember, your silence speaks louder than their noise. Your calm is the storm they cannot endure. And your deliberate indifference is the highest declaration of freedom. Because when you stop reacting, you stop being their puppet. And when you are no longer their puppet, you become untouchable. From here, we move to the next lesson: forgiveness and walking away. Not forgiveness to invite them back into your life, but forgiveness as the final act of self-liberation. Those who intentionally hurt you rarely stop at the first act. They linger, watching, waiting. Why? Because the real prize they seek is not the injury itself. It's your reaction. Their cruelty is bait. The moment you respond with rage, with tears, with endless explanations, you step into the trap they have laid. That is why silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. It flips the entire game upside down. Think about it. Manipulators thrive on drama. They need chaos the way fire needs oxygen. Every word you throw back, every defensive argument, every angry outburst, it's oxygen. It feeds them. But when you withdraw your reaction, when you remain calm and quiet, you suffocate their power. Suddenly, their performance has no audience. Their script collapses. Their game ends in their own hands. Epictetus advised, when someone provokes you, remember, it is your judgment that provokes you. In other words, their insult holds no power until you decide to give it meaning. Your silence strips away that meaning. It turns their weapon into nothing more than empty sound drifting in the air. Let's take a real-world example. Imagine someone publicly humiliates you, spreading lies, mocking you in front of others, trying to bait you into a fight. Most people would fire back instantly, desperate to defend their reputation. But a Stoic-minded person knows better. They let the insult hang in the air untouched. They do not explain. They do not justify. They do not lower themselves to the level of pettiness. Over time, the truth reveals itself. The aggressor who once seemed bold now appears smaller, weaker, consumed by his own bitterness. In that moment, silence became the sharpest reply of all. Why does this work? Because silence creates psychological boundaries. It declares, I do not need to meet you where you are. I choose to stay where peace lives. This is not denial, it is protection. By not reacting, you keep your emotional intelligence intact, your self-worth unshaken, and your inner peace fully guarded. And silence does more than protect you. It unsettles the aggressor. When they cannot read you, when they cannot provoke you, when they cannot make you dance to their tune, they lose control. We saw how silence unsettles aggressors, stripping away the power they crave. For people addicted to control, nothing feels worse. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to sit with their own chaos instead of projecting it onto you. But let's be clear, silence does not mean tolerating abuse without end. Stoic silence is not submission. It is a tactical choice, a deliberate refusal to waste energy on what does not matter. And when the time comes to act, but you act with clarity, not with rage. You speak when it serves your growth, not when it feeds their ego. Marcus Aurelius expressed this truth perfectly. The best answer to anger is silence. Not because silence denies reality, but because it refuses to amplify it. Your calm is not emptiness, it is power under control. And here lies the paradox. Silence hurts more than words ever could. They expect an explosion, but instead, you give them nothing. They expect a battle, but instead they are left to face themselves. They wanted to prove they had power over you, but your silence proves the opposite. You are beyond their reach. Think of silence as the highest form of self-respect. It says, I know who I am. I do not need to waste myself proving it to you. That is the quiet strength of a high-performance mindset. It transforms you from a target into an untouchable force. And never forget, silence is not empty. It is full of choice. It is you choosing self-worth over pettiness, inner peace over chaos, discipline over drama. So the next time someone provokes you, pause. Resist the urge to clap back, to explain, to prove. Instead, stand firm in your silence. Let them flail. Let them expose themselves. Your quiet is not surrender. It is sovereignty. From here, we step into the next stage, forgiveness. Not forgiveness to welcome them back, but forgiveness as the final act of self-liberation. Because true freedom comes not only from silence, but from letting go completely. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood virtues. Many people believe it means excusing the offender, inviting them back, or pretending the wound never existed. But Stoicism, and indeed all true spiritual discipline, offers a deeper, more liberating truth. Forgiveness is not about them. It is about you. When you cling to anger, bitterness, or the thirst for revenge, you chain yourself to the very people who hurt you. You drag them into every new day, every conversation, every quiet moment. They continue to occupy space in your mind. In essence, the wound becomes your prison. Forgiveness is the key, not because it frees them from accountability, but because it frees you from captivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way of avenging yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer. To forgive is not to forget. It is to refuse to let their cruelty reshape you into something bitter and small. Forgiveness is the decision to rise above, to guard your inner peace, and to reclaim your energy for what truly matters, your growth, your future, your life. Imagine forgiveness like setting down a heavy stone you've carried for miles. The stone doesn't vanish, but your back no longer bends under its weight. Your journey becomes lighter. Your vision grows clearer. Your steps move freer. That is what forgiveness does for the soul. But let's be honest, forgiveness is not easy. It cuts against every instinct of the ego. The ego whispers, if you forgive, they win. If you let go, you are weak. But the truth is the opposite. Weakness is clinging to resentment, replaying the pain until it consumes you. Strength is releasing it. We saw how forgiveness is not surrender, but strength. It is sovereignty, the final act of reclaiming yourself. But let's be clear, forgiveness does not mean re-entry. It does not mean giving them another chance to wound you. Psychological boundaries are essential here. You can forgive someone completely and still never allow them back into your circle. You can forgive and still cut ties. You can forgive and still say, no more. In fact, real forgiveness often requires distance, because maintaining your boundaries is the very way you protect the freedom forgiveness gives you. Take the story of a man betrayed in business by a close friend. For months he was consumed with anger, replaying conversations, fantasizing about lawsuits, dreaming of revenge. But all it did was poison his mind and pull him away from the real work of rebuilding. Eventually, he made a choice. He forgave, not to reconcile, but to release himself from obsession. He cut ties. He set firm boundaries. And he used that freed energy to build something greater than what was destroyed. Years later, he was thriving, while his betrayer remained stuck in mediocrity. His forgiveness was never for the betrayer. It was his ticket out of bondage. This is what emotional intelligence teaches us. Forgiveness is self-preservation. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace. You forgive because clinging to anger steals your clarity, drains your energy, and clouds your purpose. Inner peace and constant resentment cannot coexist. One will always destroy the other. And here is the paradox. Forgiveness can actually become the most painful punishment for those who wronged you. When you forgive, you show them their cruelty no longer defines you. When you move forward, you prove they failed to destroy you. And when you thrive, you remind them, again and again, that their betrayal only became the soil from which your strength grew. Forgiveness then becomes a weapon, not of vengeance, but of transcendence. But make no mistake, forgiveness is a process, not a switch you flip. It takes time. Some days you'll feel free. Other days the memory will sting again, and that's normal. Forgiveness is less about erasing the past and more about choosing again and again not to let it rule you. It is a discipline, practiced daily, until the chains finally fall away. So the next time someone asks, why forgive them after what they did? Your answer is simple. Because I refuse to live as their prisoner any longer. Forgiveness is the final stage of detachment. First you silence them, then you build boundaries. Finally, you let go completely. And in that release, you step into a freedom they cannot touch. Now, as we move into the next chapter, we turn to the question, what comes after forgiveness? The rise, the rebuilding, not just of what was lost, but of something far stronger, an identity forged in resilience, discipline, and unshakable peace. Because forgiveness is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of something new. Once you release the weight of bitterness, you stand before a clean slate. Yes, the past remains, but it no longer dictates your future. Now comes the moment the Stoics spoke of so often, rebuilding yourself. Not weaker, not the same, but stronger than ever before. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. The betrayal, the wound, the injustice, they are not your final story. They are merely the soil in which your new roots can grow deeper. Every collapse is also a clearing. Every ending creates the space for a rebirth. But here is the challenge. Too many people attempt to rebuild by recreating the life they had before. They chase the same relationships, repeat the same patterns, and wonder why the cracks reappear. We saw how forgiveness clears the slate, opening the path for rebuilding. But true rebuilding does not mean restoring the old house as it once stood. It means laying down a stronger foundation, one built with clarity, firm boundaries, and unshakable purpose. Think of a blacksmith forging steel. The fire does not weaken the metal, it tempers it, making it stronger. In the same way, your suffering, when embraced with wisdom, becomes the furnace that forges resilience. The pain does not define you, it refines you. Emotional intelligence transforms betrayal into insight. Self-worth converts rejection into fuel. Inner peace turns chaos into clarity. I recall the story of a woman whose entire business empire collapsed after being sabotaged by a partner she had trusted for years. For months she grieved, nearly paralyzed by despair. But one day, standing amid the ruins of her office, she whispered, "He may have taken what I had, but he will not take who I am." That single decision was the spark. She began to rebuild, not to prove anything to her betrayer, but to prove to herself that her worth was never tied to what she lost. Years later, her second business thrived far beyond the first. The betrayal that nearly destroyed her became the very fire that made her unstoppable. This is the Stoic way. You do not rise to erase the pain. You rise to prove that the pain cannot erase you. Your silence, your self-mastery, your persistence, these speak louder than any revenge ever could. But how do you rebuild in practice? First, redefine your values. Pain strips away illusions. Ask yourself what truly matters to me, then build your life around those answers. If trust was broken, rebuild not with fear, but with discernment. Second, strengthen your boundaries. Betrayal exposes where the cracks were. Now is the time to draw firmer lines, not out of anger, but out of deep self-respect. This is psychological discipline in action. Third, Cultivate a high-performance mindset. Instead of replaying the past like a broken record, channel your energy into growth. Study, create, build. Let your actions speak more powerfully than your wounds ever could. Fourth, practice spiritual discipline. Set aside time each day for stillness, for gratitude, for reflection. The Stoics meditated daily not on revenge, but on virtue. This inner work is the architecture of resilience. Fifth, transform the narrative. Stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? Pain ceases to be an enemy the moment it becomes a teacher. This rebuilding is not loud. It is not about parading to the world that you are fine. It is quiet, steady, and intentional. It is found in the small habits. Saying no when you mean no, protecting your mornings, choosing peace over drama, nurturing your craft with patience. Over time, those small acts accumulate into a fortress no betrayal can ever breach. And here is the irony. The very people who once tried to break you will one day watch you rise in disbelief. They will see your calm, your growth, your quiet success, and realize that their cruelty became the very reason you became untouchable. That is the sweetest form of justice. Not shouting, not revenge, but living free, dignified, and unstoppable. Seneca said, "Fire tests gold. Adversity tests brave men. Your suffering is not proof of weakness. It is proof that you were chosen to be refined. You are not the wound. You are the strength that survived it." So as you stand now among the ashes of what was, do not waste your time trying to glue the past back together. Instead, use those ashes as soil for something stronger. Let every scar remind you not of what you lost, but of what you gained. Clarity, strength, boundaries, and wisdom. From this place, you rise. Not bitter, not broken, but rebuilt, stronger, freer, untouchable. Yet rebuilding yourself after being wounded is only half the journey. The harder part is keeping what you've rebuilt. Refusing to let the past or the people who once hurt you reclaim space inside your mind. This is the stage the Stoics called inner discipline. A quiet strength, not loud, but unshakable. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The peace you've rebuilt cannot depend on the words or actions of others. It must be anchored in your own discipline, in how you think, how you respond, and how you choose to live each day. First, protect your mind from old ghosts. The one who hurt you may be gone, but their shadow can still linger in your thoughts. A name, a memory, even a dream can pull you back into the storm. This is the greatest trap, because now the battlefield is no longer outside. It is within your own mind. Epictetus warned us, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That means you must train your mind like a muscle. When an old memory or toxic thought arises, pause, observe it, and then choose not to be carried away. Second, choose response over impulse. When someone provokes you, when rumors spread, or when old wounds are poked, instinct will push you to react, to lash out, to defend, to retaliate. But inner discipline gives you a greater power, the ability to choose your response instead of obeying your impulse. This is emotional intelligence at its highest form, not letting feelings drive your choices, but allowing reason to guide your path. Third, practice purposeful silence. Silence is not always avoidance. In Stoicism, silence chosen deliberately becomes a source of power. When you stay quiet, not because you are afraid, but because you have nothing to prove, you send the strongest message of all. I control myself. Therefore, I am free. This is spiritual discipline, training the soul not to depend on validation or humiliation from others. Fourth, build habits that guard your peace. Peace is not a gift that falls from the sky. It is the result of daily choices. The Stoics wrote journals for self-examination. They practiced morning reflection, evening meditation, and daily resets of the mind. These habits became their shield wall against chaos. Over time, you will realize no one can invade your peace unless you hand them permission. Fifth, boundaries and consistency. Inner discipline must be paired with psychological boundaries. Setting limits is one step. Enforcing them consistently is the real test. Many people draw a line only to erase it out of fear of rejection, loneliness, or judgment. But every time you let someone cross your boundary, you betray yourself. And no wound cuts deeper than self-betrayal. Sixth, become the gatekeeper of your mind. Picture your mind as a fortress. Not everyone deserves entry. The books you read, the conversations you allow, the people you let influence you, these are all guests. Inner discipline makes you the gatekeeper. Those who bring clarity, courage, and strength are welcome inside. But those who bring envy, doubt, or poison must be stopped at the gate. After building inner discipline, we arrive at an even deeper principle: living in the present, not the past. Stoicism insists on the power of this moment. The past may teach you, but if you dwell there, it chains you. Inner discipline is the daily reminder that the present moment is the only true possession you have. And this moment does not need to be defined by an old wound. Here's the bottom line. Inner discipline does not make you emotionless, it makes you sovereign. It ensures that no memory, no trigger, no person can dictate your state of mind. This is emotional intelligence in its most mature form. Self-mastery, psychological boundaries, spiritual discipline, and inner peace reinforced by daily habit. When you hold this discipline, the peace you've rebuilt is no longer fragile. It becomes a fortress, untouchable, unshakable, beyond the reach of anyone who once tried to break you. But remember this: forgiveness, rebuilding, inner discipline, and firm boundaries are not the end. They are only the beginning. True healing is not measured by how much pain you've survived, but by how you choose to live from this day forward. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste time debating what a good man should be. Be one." That is the essence of this final stage, transforming pain into a life of meaning. From here, you no longer need debates, explanations, or even closure. Your life itself becomes the answer. Those who hurt you may never apologize. Justice may never arrive, but you don't need it in order to live with purpose. Meaning comes from the choices you make each day, choosing peace over resentment, growth over repetition, building over destruction. 1. Living with a purpose bigger than pain. You cannot erase the memory, but you can place it in perspective. A wound can close you off, or it can open a new path. The path of self-mastery, compassion, and unshakable clarity. When you live with purpose, the past becomes just another closed chapter. It no longer defines who you are. 2. Answering through quiet success. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to broadcast your healing. The way you rebuild your life, through steadiness, resilience, and quiet achievement, is the loudest answer of all. Your peace, your growth, and your progress speak louder than revenge ever could. And at that moment, those who tried to break you are forced to face the truth. They failed. 3. Finding meaning through service. Stoicism does not only call us to control ourselves, it calls us to live in a way that strengthens others. When you turn your pain into empathy, when your experience becomes encouragement for someone else walking through betrayal, you transform a private wound into a gift for the world. This is the deepest kind of meaning, your scars becoming light for others. 4. The final message. Life is not defined by what people did to you. It is defined by how you chose to respond. You don't need to prove they were wrong. You only need to live in a way that proves you were right to keep going. The greatest strength is not in revenge, but in your ability to move forward with a heart no longer carrying their weight. Here's the truth. They may have written a dark chapter in your life, but you are the author of what comes next. And when you write it with peace, with purpose, with resilience, you don't just heal, you become living proof of an unshakable truth. No one defines you but you. Now you stand here, not broken, not defined by betrayal, but reborn. What they intended for your destruction became the fire that forged you. Every scar is no longer a mark of pain, but a reminder that you didn't just survive, you transformed. You rose wiser, calmer, stronger, and that is the ultimate victory. Not revenge, not proving them wrong, but living free, at peace, and stronger than they ever imagined. Remember this: your silence is not weakness, it is mastery. Your forgiveness is not surrender, it is sovereignty. And your decision to keep walking with dignity and purpose is the loudest answer you'll ever give to those who tried to break you. Now it's your turn. If this message spoke to your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe to Life Through Stoicism, because every week we bring you tools, wisdom, and fire to live unshakable. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. I choose peace over pain. Let the world see your declaration. Your enemies may never admit what they did, but your life will be the proof. You are not broken. You are not finished. You are rebuilding into someone unstoppable. And from this day forward, nothing and no one can touch your peace.